Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. What can I get for you?
You know what? I love that our government's shut down. Why don't you just tell me how also the legal system is completely broken in this country?
Pull up to the second window and we'll see you next crime.
Welcome to True Crime to Go. I am John here with Jamie. You had like a painful look on your face. Everything okay over there?
Two reasons. That's a really heavy order you just placed, and I'm fighting a sneeze. So the combination of those two things was, yeah.
Remind me to talk about your sneeze over on Bless Their Hearts. You have probably the most recognizable sneeze of all my friends.
It's pretty loud. It's not intentional, but I don't fight it either. So it is what it is.
I think you fight to make it louder, but we'll talk about that on Bless Their Hearts.
Okay.
All right, man. This case is dark for a True Crime to Go, so I'm going to go ahead and apologize now, but we're going to go back to December 7th, 2015, to a little town that you would look at it if you're not from around here and assume it's pronounced Versailles, but no, we call it Versailles, Kentucky. And that's when there was something awful that happened. Jamie, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, so first of all, in Kentucky, we obviously have a lot of European city names, but we Kentuckyize them. So we have Versailles and Athens are the main ones that are pronounced differently, but sure we could get into some more, like how we're not, welcome in London.
That's another Bless Their Hearts. There are some weird city names in Kentucky.
We're going to go down to Versailles, and we're going to talk about Ronald Exantus. On the day you mentioned, December 7th, 2015, Exantus, who was a dialysis nurse by profession, broke into a home owned by the Tipton family through an unlocked door. He moved through the house in the middle of the night, went into the children's bedroom, and stabbed 6-year-old Logan Tipton as he slept, ending the little boy's life. The dad, Dean, and the two daughters were also wounded in the attack, but little Logan was the only one that lost his life at this break-in.
I remember this very vividly. I worked fairly close to Versailles at this time, and this was in the news. It was devastating, to say the least. The family member recounts terrible details from the night. The father tried to intervene. He was attacked and thrown across the room. One daughter said that she was stabbed in the back and then stomped on. The older sister witnessed what was going on. This is just absolutely insane. And they're woken up to this, so it's like you're disoriented anyway. I'm sure it felt like just a horribly vivid nightmare. So they finally got this guy, and at trial, a Kentucky jury found that he was not guilty because of the reason of insanity. And again, that was for the 6-year-old Logan's murder. But he was guilty and on assault charges, but he was considered mentally ill. And, he murdered a 6-year-old boy, and they found him not guilty by reason of insanity, but did charge him and convict him for assault charges. He was sentenced in 2018 to 20 years in prison, composed of 2 consecutive 10-year terms for the assaults.
I wish I had more insight into the trial transcripts where they said, you know what? You're a little too crazy for us to hold you accountable for murder, but just crazy enough to hold you accountable for assault.
I really can't understand how this happened, and it gets worse. Let's keep going.
Yeah, it's just I don't understand, and it gets more complex as of October 2025 when he was released from prison. Let's go back to when he was supposed to be released, which was 2038 after his 20-year sentence he was given in 2018. So 13 years early, he was let out of jail. When the House Press Secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, confirmed the White House is now looking into the early release, she said it's wholly unacceptable for a child killer to walk free after just 7 years in prison. Yeah, it is. It really is.
So this is like a local Kentucky news story, but it made its way nationally to where the President of the United States press secretary was asked about this.
Yeah. So how'd this happen? Kentucky law has a provision called the mandatory reentry supervision, which under certain circumstances, even if the parole board denies somebody being paroled, they still have to be released from prison. It sounds really complicated.
I don't understand it. I don't understand how human beings can be okay with letting this guy go.
Yeah. Yeah. It was on September 30th that the Department of Corrections said that it's required by statute that he be released and placed on mandatory reentry supervision. So he's being supervised, but he's not even in Kentucky. He's in Florida now under the Interstate Compact for Adult Offender Supervision.
Well, I didn't know.
I assume these things are put in place to protect people, but it seems like it's doing the opposite.
It sounds like, hey, we don't want this guy in Kentucky anymore. Let's send him down to Florida. What's interesting is Florida has a really interesting policy that I was not aware of. So you know how if you're a sexual offender and you move, you have to register as a sexual offender?
You do,
That's
yes.
no brainer. Florida has a law where if you even have a felony conviction on your background check and you move in, you have to register. I bet that's the busiest job in the world. So this guy moved to Florida, did not register. Kentucky kind of let Florida know that he was down there, and Florida picked him up and arrested him for being a felon without registering before moving into the state. I'm sure he's not going to stay in prison for 20 years for that, and he's probably already out on bond by this point, but just an interesting caveat to the story.
It is, yeah. I wonder Florida should have a law where you have to register if you've not committed a felony. That might be a shorter list.
That would be a much more efficient system.
You're like, sir, we haven't heard from you. What felony have you committed before moving to our great state?
The Tipton family has released some statements, and they have done interviews, and obviously they are completely outraged. Logan Tipton's father said that if he ever saw this man on the street, he would end his life. And as a father myself, I don't blame him. And I'm not condoning hanging people up in the streets anymore, but our justice system completely failed this little boy. Logan's older sister said that she and her siblings watched the attacker kill their brother, and then that he is released feels even more like a violation. He did it right in front of me, in front of my siblings. He ruined us, is her quote. County and state officials have also been forced into conversations. They call for basically to re-examine the case and possibly charge or to change the law so that situations like this cannot happen again. The Kentucky state legislatures are set to meet in January. They will convene until I think March or April. I hope that this law is something that gets changed and gets changed quickly, because we cannot allow people capable of murdering a little boy. I mean, he went in there hell-bent to murder the whole family. So we can't let people like that back out.
Republican Representative Jason Nemes has proposed Logan's Law, named after Logan Tipton, to prevent the kind of loophole that was exploited here and allowed Exantus's early release, to ensure that violent criminals found insane can't enter society prematurely, which, again, just blows my mind that he's found unable to be convicted of murder, but able to be convicted of assault. Still doesn't make sense to me. I would love for somebody to sit down and explain it. And it seems like if it's a loophole and things like this are happening, I'm not sure anybody really understands. Maybe they understand, like I said, it's an original purpose, probably to protect somebody, but it creates a ripple effect that causes all these awful things to happen like this. And hopefully Exantus doesn't hurt anybody else before we get this figured out.
I really want to figure out the loophole that allowed members of the parole board to vote that they did not want him released, but still he got released. The parole board members have had death threats made on them because of letting this guy go, but they've had to respond saying, look, I voted that I wanted to keep the guy in prison, but this new law prevented that from happening. So I want to get to the bottom of that, and maybe that will be a fun story at some point to just talk about. I want to know why before I completely bash it, but obviously in this situation, it completely failed the system.
We've talked to our friends over at the Prosecutors Podcast about going on their show to talk about something. I think this may be a good piece to go and go to them on and get their take on this law and how it's been, not only why it exists, but how it's been interpreted and is being delivered.
Well, I mean, I can imagine I guess they didn't even try him for murder. I wonder if that's true. Like, basically I'm asking, could there be double jeopardy? Like, did they try him and find him not guilty on murder? Because if they did, and that's the way this reads, then they cannot try him again for that. So hopefully the real story is that they didn't try him for murder because of the insanity, and maybe they can bring more charges back up. But either way, this guy's out of jail and he shouldn't be.
That sounds like a best case scenario situation, and I'm not optimistic that that's the way things are going to go. But as we get more updates, we'll let you know if he's sent back to Kentucky or put back in jail. But would love to hear your take on this. Are we just being outrageous, or is this really a ridiculous thing to even consider? But we appreciate you guys joining us today for a crime story in 10 minutes or less.
Would you like crime with that?
You've listened to True Crimecast, distributed by Stoveleg Media. Check out stoveleg.com to find out more about your hosts and to find other podcasts to listen to. Stoveleg Media, igniting conversation.